Hi, this is Tom Russell in El Paso, Texas, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Adios.
Hey, congratulations on this album where you not only pay tribute to two people whose music and songs you admire, but also two people no doubt you classify as dear friends. That must make this project even more special to you.
Yeah, I always say that although I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan and the Beatles and everything else, the two songwriters that influenced me the most were Ian and Sylvia Tyson, and I don't think they got their due as far as world fame. They're very influential on a lot of people, and as I say in the liner notes, Ian Tyson wrote the most famous song ever written by a Canadian, Four Strong Winds. Neil Young and a bunch of people did it, but they're very influential in a very underground way, so I wanted to do their lesser known songs on a tribute record.
Yeah, you're so right. I've always felt that as well. They're certainly revered in Canada, but probably haven't been given the attention they deserve elsewhere in the world. Do you have a theory on why that is?
Several. They didn't travel as much. I don't think they ever toured Europe, or I don't think they ever toured anywhere outside North America. That was one problem. A couple of other funny problems is, as far as when they broke through, and Albert Grossman was their manager, who also managed Dylan and Janis Joplin, etc. Ian and Sylvia didn't write protest songs at the height of the protest music, and the reason was they were Canadians. They were in the USA by the grace of the government. They had nothing to protest, to be honest, and a lot of the folk, the people that ran folk festivals like Newport kind of held that against them. And Ian was a pretty tough guy, too, to deal with. He was kind of a cowboy. So a lot of times they may have hurt themselves. He also, it's pretty well known, he got busted at the high point of their career for having the airline sent his guitar across the border into the United States by mistake when he wasn't with it, and it had a marijuana joint in it. And when it came back over the border back into Canada, he got busted by the mounted police, and he lost his green card for 3 or 4 years. So all those factors at the wrong moment, I think, kind of didn't help them out.
Sure. This is an album I believe you've been thinking about doing for many years. What convinced you that this was the right time to do it?
I've been thinking about that, and I get more and more confidence in my ability to record a record and hear the sounds I want to hear. We're releasing my new record, Folk Hotel, officially September 8th, but it's available for review now. We'll try to get you one. It's on Proper Records UK for the world outside of North America. So we'll, if you send, we'll try to get you a play copy. But I think I started over in a way. I started with a very simple tribute to Ian and Sylvia, 2 guitars and a female vocalist, Cindy Church, a great guitar player with me, Grant Siemens from Canada. And I wanted to just bring out the melodies and the great songs and sing them honestly. But that got me started thinking I want to do a folk record too. So my next record which is coming out now, is called Folk Hotel. And then I want to do a country record, like a 1960s country record. So I think after all these years and 35 records, I'm starting over because I know how to record now, and I'm singing 100% better, and I'm still writing. So I think I went back to my roots.
Do you think it's something of an underrated art form in interpreting the songs of others? I prefer to use the word interpret rather than cover because there's a lot more to it than just covering the song, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think one of the drawbacks that people do, and they had the company, the record company that put this out, True North in Canada, asked if I was going to use other artists, which is the typical thing you do with a tribute record. You get young groups or you get a famous name and you mix it up, and sometimes that works, but often it doesn't, because you don't get a consistent reading of the songs, and you get people trying to take them into other realms, like, okay, let's do Four Strong Winds as a reggae song. Okay, that either works or it's a disaster. I wanted something that was sonically perfect and played tribute to how sophisticated these lyrics and these melodies are. And it took me a hell of a long time to learn to sing these songs, because they're melodically very sophisticated and they're lyrically very sophisticated, and they hold up. So the method I used was something that pleased me. And it's going, I guess it was the most played folk radio record in June across the world, 137 disc jockeys. So I'm very proud of that people have embraced the sound.
Yeah. As you mentioned, you haven't included any of the obvious Ian and Sylvia songs like Four Strong Winds or You Were On My Mind. Was that an intent of yours right from the beginning, to dig a bit deeper?
Yeah, because those songs have been so well covered and they were hits, and my intention was, okay, you need to hear these other songs. They didn't ever record a weak song that I can recall on any of their 13 records. So there's much depth to what we can explore there. I mean, the ones I used, Wild Geese, I included a couple I co-wrote with them that I hadn't recorded. I just thought people should know about the depth of their catalog. And I think we're living in a world, as a music fan, I'd say we're living in a world where we're not creating songwriters of that character and ability, I don't think music moves in a straight line, and art doesn't either. I mean, as somebody said, the cavemen could paint pretty damn well. So I think to go back and see that people were recording records with 12 great songs on them is important.
I assume by now you've had feedback from both Ian and Sylvia on their thoughts on the record. Anything you'd like to share on that front?
Well, I may know them too well. They divorced in the 70s. And to be quite honest, and knowing them so well, it wasn't a smooth ride for them. Lack of recognition, the marriage broke down, and they separated, and Ian went off to Western Canada to become a cowboy and later resurrected the modern cowboy song almost single-handedly, and I co-wrote songs with him like Navajo Rug. And Sylvia in the same way didn't, if you brought up Ian and Sylvia, they'd kind of tell me, Russell, you're living in the past. We have careers now, and she had a TV show as he did. She's written novels. He's gone on to, as I said, resurrect the cowboy song. Sylvia has heard it and applauds it. And Ian I haven't heard from. He was down at our house in Santa Fe, New Mexico several months ago, and I played him the record, and he liked most of it. Some of the songs he didn't like because he never liked them when he wrote them, I guess. I don't know. So he's a crusty old guy. He's 84 now, but I think deep down he was proud of it, and I think both of them are proud of the fact that finally these songs from their deep catalog are being recognized.
Well, let's talk about some of the songs. Thrown to the Wolves is one you actually co-wrote with Sylvia, but you haven't chosen to record it yourself until now. Tell us about that song.
I think, I co-produced several of Sylvia's records 25 years ago, and when she was embarking on her solo career. And we sat down and wrote 5 or 6 songs. Indeed, there's enough material of stuff like that for me to do a follow-up on this maybe in a couple of years and put out some stuff nobody's ever heard. But I think Thrown to the Wolves was an attempt to write somewhat of a country song that wasn't a cliche. We liked the hook. The guy's out on the street trying to make it, and I don't remember too much about it, but I never recorded it, and I thought this would be something fresh to bring to my fans.
I was really pleased to see you included Rio Grande on the album, a song that comes from a wonderful period in their career back with The Great Speckled Bird.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that Ian co-wrote it with the great guitar player Amos Garrett.
Amos Garrett, yeah.
Yeah, who lives in up in Alberta near Ian, but he's an American, but famous guitar player. And a lot of people have never heard that song. Here's another key point about Ian Tyson. He's affiliated with the resurrection of the cowboy song in the late 70s and 80s, but he was writing great cowboy songs in the 60s, obviously Someday Soon, Old Cheyenne, which we put on the record, and Rio Grande, which was on the Great Speckled Bird record, when they were breaking into folk rock and country rock, and they were every bit as influential as Graham Parsons and Steve Young. Never got the recognition. They were very loud then, and a lot of their folk fans didn't dig it. But Rio Grande's a pretty edgy song for the 60s because the cowboy's in jail, and he's been smuggling cocaine, which, blows all over the mountain. So it's a pretty risky song for the 60s, but it's also got a very beautiful melody line, which was very challenging. So I always wanted to try it.
That Great Speckled Bird album is one of the great forgotten classic albums, I think, of the era, and I guess that would have had a great effect on you.
Yeah, in fact, I wrote the liner notes when Stony Plain reissued it. I wrote a long set of liner notes. Very much so. I saw him live quite a lot. When I was a kid, I saw Ian and Sylvia in the folk clubs of Los Angeles in Southern California. But later, I lived in Vancouver for several years and had started my music career up there in the same bars that Ian started his in 15 years before me. But I saw the Great Speckled Bird several times in the early 70s, and it was such a great band, but the sound systems couldn't accommodate them. They had these little Shure Vocal Master sound systems. They were blowing the speakers out of them because they had Amos Garrett on electric guitar. They had the great Buddy Cage from the New Riders of the Purple Sage on steel guitar. They had Indy Smart from the band Mountain on the drums, and I forget the bass players, Kenny Kalmusky on bass. Those great loud Ian and Sylvia vocals. It was a loud, edgy band, and I think what happened were their folk fans weren't ready for that, and they didn't know how to interpret it, and that worked against them.
Mm. Another song of note, the night the Chinese restaurant burned down, which I've read you say was written from a woman's perspective. How do you go about the task of taking on a song like that? That was written from a woman's point of view.
I was so taken with the song for so many years, and to be truthful, that's my favorite track on the record. That I did pull it off. But to me, and I co-produced the record where Sylvia originally recorded. To me, it's such a great short story, and obviously true, that the night Sylvia and her best friend, who were trying to be singers, left town was the very night the local Chinese restaurant burned to the ground, which would have been a big deal if you're living in a small Canadian town back in the 50s or early 60s. And the story is told so well about all the regulars coming out to watch the restaurant burning down, and then the girls catch the next Greyhound bus for Toronto in the big time. I didn't know how I would pull it off as a man, but I just kept going with it in the studio. And then Cindy Church, the great Canadian singer who sings actually with Sylvia and who sang with Ian many years, sang the harmony. And I think it works. I mean, the person singing the song is obviously a woman, but it could be a man, you know. So the couple could have taken off for Toronto. I just love the story.
I believe that the song "Play One More" is one you particularly relate to because invoking memories of your days playing in Vancouver, playing the CD bar circuit. Tell us about those days.
Well, I graduated from the University of California, Santa Barbara, with a degree in master's degree in criminology, and I got a job in West Africa right away in Nigeria teaching, and I was plunged right in the middle of the Biafran War, and it was quite a growing up period for me. But in that period, I decided academia wasn't for me. I liked the subject matter. I didn't really want to be stuck in office the rest of my life. So I played more and more guitar in Africa and sat in bars with people like King Sunny Ade, and people encouraged me to keep up with my music. So when we hit back in North America, we went up to visit friends in Vancouver, and I started hanging out in bars along Skid Row, listening to country bands. And at one time, a guy said, "You should put a band together because this is where you start." And that's what I did eventually. And brutal hours, 7 nights a week, or 6 nights a week, 6 to 8 hours a night, playing country standards and Creedence Clearwater and Rod Stewart and Hank Williams, and trying to sneak in your first songs, and a lot of Native Americans would come and hang out, lots of fights, lots of crime. It was the original Skid Row was named after the street in Vancouver, Hastings Street, that used to be wooden sidewalks that you'd skid off of back in the lumberjack days. But it was a brutal awakening, but I knew I would get out of there eventually the same way Ian did. And he writes about it very well in a song called Summer Wages, about all the bars along Main Street and the hookers, etc. So I was proud that I came out of the same environment, and from there I went to Austin, Texas.
Now, there's also a song on the record you co-wrote with Ian, with the Wolves No Longer Sing. Tell us about the collaborative process between the two of you in writing that.
Well, that's a relatively new one. It's on my last double record, The Rose of Roscrea, but I didn't sing it. Gretchen Peters did, but I didn't record it. And Ian, we sort of wrote it for Ian's last record, which was called Carnero Vaquero, which came out 2 years ago. And the song, he recorded a different version. I cut a verse out of it, but it's a song basically about he and I ruminating again on the fact that there aren't a lot of great young songwriters like there were when he came out of the Greenwich Village with Dylan and dozens of great writers in the 60s. But it's a song of hope, maybe one day the Muse will come back. Maybe the Wolves will sing again. And that's kind of the vibe of the song.
Mm. There's also a couple of bonus tracks finishing off the record, some old demos of Ian and Sylvia's. Tell us about the origins of those recordings.
I knew him so well. And again, they were so disinterested in the early years of their Ian and Sylvia thing that I would, if I was hanging out with Ian or Sylvia, I would pick up something and say, "Wow, what's this? Oh, it's a manuscript of Bob Dylan's song," or some of this stuff that is priceless. And I picked up a cassette one day, and I don't know if it was Ian or Sylvia, but there were 30 or 40 demos on there. Some of the big songs, some of the not so big songs. I said, "What's this?" And she or he, or it was, said, "Oh, take it. It's just some demos." And recently I went through the whole thing and I blew my mind, because here were the first recordings of all their great songs, and some songs that never made the record, and other songs. For instance, the one I put of Ian's, "The French Girl," was at the same period recorded by Bob Dylan on the Basement tapes with the band, and that's the demo he heard of Ian sing that is on this record, of Ian singing "French Girl." Beautiful song. And then Sylvia's "Gray Morning," I think we used, shows the fact that very early on she was a really good blues singer, and that was one of her big influences was early folk blues. So maybe down the line we'll be able to release some more of those because they're fantastic.
It's turning out to be a pretty busy year for you. This album just released a couple of months back, and as you mentioned, another one coming out in September. What more can you tell us about it?
Folk Hotel. And I'm very proud of it. It's got a great cover that I painted of Greenwich Village in the 50s. It's got 14 songs, 2 bonus tracks. It's 13 new Tom Russell songs all over the place that are mostly folk-oriented. You know, there's one about Chelsea Hotel, which is called Up in the Old Hotel. There's a sea shanty type song about moving to Santa Fe with my wife Nadine. One of the bonus tracks is very cool. It's a cover of Bob Dylan's "Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues" with Joe Ely swapping verses with me, and Joel Guzman, the great Tex-Mex accordion player, playing. We also have Eliza Gilkison on the record, the great Augie Meyer from formerly Sir Douglas Quintet, Texas Tornadoes, doing a song called Harlan Clancy, which it's not so much political, but it may explain the current situation in the States. It's about a guy in Southern Ohio who's a really good guy, but he's sort of, you know, he works with a Mexican guy. It's an attempt to understand a lot of people I worked with when I worked brutal jobs, you know, and then where their head might be at, but they're still good people. So, you know, I wrote a song 10 years ago called "Who's Gonna Build Your Wall?" and it's kind of come back into the song. I did it on the David Letterman show 6 or 7 years ago, and now it's become it's gone kind of astral. But again, I always try to look at it from the point of view of one person instead of pointing fingers brutally, you know. So there is quite a bit of that on the record, just human stories, and very, very proud of it. We recorded it at Congress House in Austin, where I haven't recorded for a dozen years. It's probably vocally at least my best record, and I think overall my most balanced and best record. It's on Frontera Records in North America and on proper records for the rest of the world. So I'm hoping people will check that out.
Fantastic. Can't wait to hear it. Hey, Tom, thanks so much for your time. Great to catch up with you again.
Thank you, John. And I always encourage people to check out our Facebook, because I do sort of a virtual radio show of posting one song a day with a little history. I just posted a few minutes ago Johnny Cash impersonating Elvis back in 1959. So check that out. And I always thank people like you, John, for keeping the faith.
I will go and check that out right away. That sounds fascinating. Thank you so much again, Tom. Congratulations on a piece of work that is obviously a labour of love for you, and we look forward to hearing the new one very, very soon.
Thank you, John.
All the best. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.